Hey, what's up guys? Today I'm going to show you a creepy body horror drama movie called The Substance. Spoilers are coming, so keep your eyes wide open and stay safe. The movie kicks off with a super close-up of an egg yolk being injected with some weird green liquid. The yolk splits in half, and bam, a perfect copy pops out. Then, the scene cuts to the Hollywood Walk of Fame, zooming in on the star of a famous actress named Elizabeth Sparkle. At first, fans are crowding around her star, but as time goes on, people kind of forget about her, treating her like she's old news. Elizabeth is the star of a TV aerobics show called Sparkle It Up, where she teaches people how to exercise with lots of energy and excitement. One day, after a long day of filming, she tries to go into the women's restroom, but it's out of order, so she sneaks into the men's room instead. While hiding in there, she overhears a conversation that really shakes her up. The president of the TV network, a guy named Harvey, is talking with someone else about how he wants to get rid of Elizabeth because she's turned 50 and he thinks she's too old to be the star anymore. Later, Elizabeth meets up with Harvey for lunch, hoping to save her job, but Harvey, who's busy shoveling a ton of shrimp into his mouth in a gross way, tells her that it's time for her to go, and he's letting her go from the show. On her way home from a tough day, Elizabeth is driving when she suddenly notices something that shocks her. A huge billboard with her face on it is being taken down. The sight really upsets her, and she gets distracted while driving. Before she knows it, she's in a serious car accident. Luckily, she survives and ends up at the doctor's office for a checkup. At the clinic, a nurse does some tests on Elizabeth and tells her she's a perfect candidate, though she doesn't say exactly for what. As she leaves, the nurse secretly slips a flash drive into Elizabeth's jacket pocket without her noticing. As Elizabeth heads out of the doctor's office, a man named Fred approaches her. It turns out he remembers her all the way from high school. He gushes over how she's still the most beautiful woman in the world, and even though his compliments feel a little too eager and pushy, he gives her his phone number before she leaves. When Elizabeth gets home, she's curious about the flash drive and plugs it into her computer. On the screen, she finds a video advertising something called The Substance. A smooth voice explains that this special treatment allows people to feel like they are living as a younger, better version of themselves. The twist? They switch between their young and old bodies every 7 days, and there are no exceptions. At first, Elizabeth isn't interested and thinks it's a silly idea, but as she sits alone in her house, feeling lonely and wishing for the exciting days of her youth, she starts to reconsider. After some thinking, she decides to call the number Fred gave her. When she calls, the person on the other end doesn't ask many questions. Instead, they simply give her an address and tell her to provide her own information. Elizabeth gets a special ID card and heads to the address she was given. It leads her down a dark, shady alley to a secret building that looks kind of mysterious. Inside, she discovers a deposit box with her number on it. Curiously, she opens the box and finds the substance tucked away inside. Excited and a bit nervous, Elizabeth goes back home. She remembers the green fluid from before and decides to inject it into her arm. At first, nothing happens, but soon she starts to feel a sharp pain and suddenly collapses on the floor. To her shock, a huge slit opens up in her back, and out comes a younger, stunning woman. This younger version of Elizabeth quickly sews up the wound in her back and then pulls out a special stabilizer fluid. She carefully uses it on herself and on the original Elizabeth's body to keep everything balanced. It's a wild and strange moment as Elizabeth realizes her life is about to change forever. The younger woman decides to call herself Sue and quickly impresses Harvey, landing a spot at Elizabeth's old network. Sue loves the spotlight and basks in all the attention, feeling like a superstar during her first week. She's full of energy and excitement, enjoying every moment of her new life. But when it's time for her to return to being Elizabeth, things are very different. Elizabeth's life feels boring and dull compared to the thrill Sue experienced. The only big thing on her to-do list is to go back to the network to pick up the rest of her belongings from Harvey. As she walks through the familiar halls, she can't help but feel a little sad and forgotten, wishing for the excitement that Sue gets to enjoy every day. When Sue goes back to her new life, she finds out that her fitness show has been picked up for full-time airing. Harvey is more than happy to adjust his schedule to fit around Sue's unique needs. She feels like she's on top of the world. To keep her secret safe, Sue builds a hidden room in the bathroom where she can hide Elizabeth's body while she is unconscious. However, the noise from her construction catches the attention of a grumpy neighbor. He comes over to complain, but when he sees how stunning and young Sue is, he quickly forgets his anger. Instead, he awkwardly tries to flirt with her, but it doesn't go very well. Sue just smiles and shakes her head, realizing how different her life has become and how she now has all the attention she ever wanted. Just hours before she has to switch back to being Elizabeth, Sue decides to go out for a fun night. She meets a guy named Troy and brings him home, excited for some time together. But suddenly, she starts to feel strange and gets a nosebleed. Her time is almost up. Desperate for a little more fun, Sue thinks quickly. She grabs a stabilizer tube she'd used before and carefully extracts more of the special fluid from Elizabeth's body. This gives her the chance to spend the night with Troy without switching back just yet. Sue feels a rush of excitement, knowing hoping she can enjoy her time with Troy a bit longer, even though she's playing a risky game. When Elizabeth finally wakes up, she looks at her right hand and is shocked to see it looks old and sickly. Panic sets in as she realizes that spending extra time as Sue has taken a toll on her. She quickly calls the number for the substance, but the voice on the other end tells her some bad news. The effects are irreversible and she needs to respect the balance. They also warn her not to think of Sue as a separate person because Sue is still a part of Elizabeth. Feeling worried and confused, Elizabeth gets her refill kit and heads to a nearby diner to gather her thoughts. While she's there, she spots an old man with a birthmark on his arm that looks just like the one on the nurse who told her about the substance. The man suddenly frightens her when he starts talking about the bad effects of being younger. He asks her if Sue has started eating away at her yet. This sends Elizabeth into a panic, and she rushes out of the diner, feeling scared. Outside, she bumps into Troy, who was picking up his motorcycle from her building. He yells at her, surprised by her sudden rush, but she can't focus on his words. She just needs to escape and figure out what to do next. Elizabeth remembers the phone number Fred gave her and decides to call him to take him up on his offer to go to dinner. He's super excited and quickly makes a reservation at a nice restaurant. As Elizabeth gets ready to leave, she looks out the window and sees the big billboard advertising Sue's show. It catches her attention and fills her with a mix of feelings. She starts going back and forth to the bathroom, applying and wiping off her makeup, trying to make herself look perfect. But after a while, Elizabeth feels more and more bitter and frustrated. She can't shake off the feelings of jealousy and sadness, so she finally decides to bail on the date. Without telling Fred, she just gives up and sinks into her thoughts, feeling lost and unhappy. While filming an episode of Sue's show, something strange happens. During a take, Sue suddenly feels something bulging against her backside. Confused and embarrassed, she quickly covers herself up and walks out of the studio, not wanting to see what she hopes isn't really happening as the crew plays back the footage. Hurrying to the bathroom, Sue pushes on the lump she feels, trying to figure out what it is. To her shock, she finds out it's a whole chicken leg that somehow popped out of her belly button. She can't believe what's happening and feels a mix of panic and disbelief. Later, feeling overwhelmed, Sue decides to call the number for the substance to complain. She tells them about Elizabeth's binge drinking and eating habits, saying that it's not fair because she barely has any time to enjoy her new life. All Sue wants is to live happily without dealing with the mess Elizabeth keeps causing. Later on, Sue heads to the studio only to find out that the taping for her show has been canceled. Confused, she goes to see Harvey, who tells her some exciting news. Sue has become so popular that they want her to host a special New Year's Eve show. Thrilled by the opportunity, Sue happily accepts, but this means she will spend even more time away from Elizabeth. When Sue finally returns to Elizabeth's body, she's shocked to see how much worse things have become. Elizabeth looks even older and more frail, with her legs barely able to move. Feeling frustrated and trapped, Elizabeth decides to keep herself busy by trying out a French cookbook that Harvey had given her as a gift. The gift felt a bit condescending to her, but she tries to make the best of it. As she flips through the pages and attempts to cook, Elizabeth can't help but grow to hate Sue even more. She watches Sue on a talk show, where Sue mockingly talks about Elizabeth's old show, making fun of the past that Elizabeth wishes she could forget. Every word feels like a jab, deepening Elizabeth's feelings of anger and sadness. To get back at Elizabeth for her disgusting habits, Sue spends the next 3 months extracting fluid from Elizabeth's body. Over time, the area starts to look like an infected sore, and Sue begins to worry. When she tries to use the fluid one last time, she is horrified to see that it comes out looking necrotic and unhealthy. Panicking, Sue calls the number for the substance for answers. The voice on the line tells her that she has reached the end of her time using her young body, and if she goes back to being Elizabeth, the stabilizing fluid will reset. Sue feels trapped and sees no other choice but to return. When she finally switches back to Elizabeth's body, she is shocked at the sight in the mirror. Elizabeth has transformed into a grotesque, hunchbacked abomination. Her appearance is unrecognizable, and Sue realizes that the consequences of her choices have led to this terrible fate. Feeling a mix of fear and regret, she wonders how she will ever escape this nightmare. Elizabeth makes a tough decision to end her use of the substance. She knows that this won't reverse the changes already made to her, but it will allow her to live the rest of her life as she is. Holding a syringe filled with black fluid, she prepares to inject it into Sue's chest, but just before using the whole syringe, she hesitates and pulls it out, unsure of what to do next. Suddenly, Sue wakes up and sees Elizabeth right in front of her. Enraged, she lunges at Elizabeth and attacks her with fierce anger. The two struggle wildly, and in a terrifying moment, Sue slams Elizabeth's face against a mirror again and again, shouting in fury. It all happens so fast, and in a fit of rage, Sue beats Elizabeth until she can't move anymore, leaving a shocking scene behind. Sue rushes to the network to prepare for the exciting New Year's Eve special, but things quickly go wrong. Her body starts to literally fall apart. 3 of her front teeth suddenly drop out, her fingernails begin to peel off, and her left ear hair slips down her face. Panic sets in as she realizes she looks like a mess. Desperate to fix the situation, Sue races back home. In her frantic search, she discovers a vial of the activator fluid, which she remembers was meant for one-time use only. Hoping it will create another young body for her, she injects it without thinking, but instead of making her look young again, the fluid gives birth to a horrifying creature called Monstro Alisasu. This ghastly being has multiple limbs, sharp teeth, and even breasts, but the most disturbing part is Elizabeth's gasping face that's stuck on the back of it. Sue stares in shock, realizing she has created a terrible monster instead of saving herself. Fear and regret wash over her as she faces the chaos she has unleashed. Monstro, looking terrifying with Elizabeth's face from a poster taped to its own, strides back to the network. It fits into Sue's dress, but the sight is nothing short of creepy. As Monstro makes its way to the stage, the poster face suddenly falls off, showing the audience its truly hideous appearance, shocking even the children watching. In a panic, Harvey rushes to attack Monstro, swinging a mic stand with all his strength. He manages to blow its head off, but in a bizarre twist, the head quickly regenerates and pops back into place. Monstro's arm falls off, and to everyone's horror, it sprays the audience with a fountain of gore, drenching the entire room in sticky red goo. Chaos erupts as people scream and try to escape the horrifying scene, realizing that this monstrous creation is far more dangerous than they ever expected. Monstro somehow manages to escape the studio, but then it suddenly collapses, splattering into nothingness all around. From the mess, a strange, fleshy mass begins to emerge, and attached to it is Elizabeth's original face. Weak but determined, she crawls toward her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Looking up with joy, she imagines sparkles raining down on her, filling her with happiness. With a final smile, Elizabeth feels a sense of peace, but then she slowly dissolves into a puddle of goo. The morning comes, and a floor scrubber rolls in to clean the area. As it sweeps away the puddle, there's no trace left of Elizabeth behind, leaving her story to vanish just like that. It's as if she was never there at all, and the world moves on without her. Which movie should we recap next? Drop your suggestions in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more movie recaps. Thanks for watching.